What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one I'm going to go through my current team, which I was going to leave until the team selection video next week, but the injury to Gabriel Jesus is pretty big for me because he's been in almost every single draft that I've put out. So not only does it require a rethink on the forwards, but also the midfielders as well, and potentially it has opened up a route to get Mo Salah in, which I hadn't previously considered. So I'll talk about that at the end as well. Just before we jump into it, I have partnered with Fantasy Football Hub for this season. I've talked about the My Team tool quite a lot. You can get a free rating on that using the link in the description below. But that tool also has some other cool features as well, one of which is AI transfers. So I've actually plugged the draft I'm about to show you into the tool, and that's going to recommend me some transfers it thinks I should make instead. Now, you don't have to go with the recommendations, but sometimes it will throw up players that you hadn't considered, and it'll make you think about them a little bit more. So I've got Onana in the draft, spoiler alert, and it thinks that I should potentially get Edison in by freeing up some cash elsewhere, and it will show you the points projections over the next few weeks as well. So that can be a really handy tool. It's not just that, there's Optastats, there's fixture analyzers, loads of stuff as part of the membership, and there's up to 50% off at the moment. You can use the link in the description below, and if you sign up and don't win your mini league, they will give you your money back. Terms and conditions apply. Like I said, all the links you need, description below. So by the time this video goes out, there's going to be less than a week until the game week 1 deadline. I am recording it on Friday, so hopefully there's no more major injuries before Saturday morning. But either way, I'm starting to get fairly settled on most of these players as well as the formation. So at one point, I was on a 3-4-3, but I'm still on the 3-5-2 at this stage, and I think that's going to stick, especially with the injuries to Jesus and Nkunku. It kind of just kills that idea off completely. Now in defence, still got Gabriel and Estepinian, been in every single draft, great value. The only thing I want to talk about is Estepinian, because I keep seeing on Twitter especially people that are worried about what we will do with him, especially if we've got no money in the bank after game week 3. But I think people are worrying a little bit too much about the fixtures that they have. So if I just pull them up here, first 3 weeks, we're not worried whatsoever, right? Luton at home, Wolves away, West Ham at home. All of us are going to play him in every single one of those fixtures. Then the next 3 are Newcastle at home, Man United away, and Bournemouth at home. Now, straight away, Bournemouth is a perfectly fine fixture to play him in. So that's 4 of the first 6 are great. Man United away, I would agree, is a difficult fixture. I would expect Man United to score. Even if Estepinian can go and get an attack and return, he's very unlikely to get a clean sheet. But the Newcastle game, I'm just not as worried about it as everyone else is. And obviously Newcastle are a really good side, especially in attack as well as defence, to be fair. The likes of Isak and Wilson and Barnes and Gordon, etc. But Brighton is also a decent enough defence. They're the team that's at home. And as I've just said, Estepinian can go and get attack and returns as well. So when I look at that fixture run, okay, would I rather have a better fixture than Newcastle? Yes, but am I massively worried about that? No. So if we get to game week 4 and I've got a spare transfer and there's a good option to go for instead of Estepinian, then I will. If not, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to play him, right? And okay, I'll deal with Man United away, but then straight away you got Bournemouth. So I think 4 and maybe even 5 of the first 6 fixtures are perfectly fine. So I don't really get this worry with Estepinian. After that, it's Villa away, Liverpool at home, Man City away. That is a little bit tougher. And at that point, maybe I will deal with him. But if you've got a deep enough bench, you can just bench him for a few weeks and then come into the really good fixtures after that, which are Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest. So, I don't know, I keep seeing what are we going to do with him after 3 weeks. Well, what I'm going to do with him is probably just keep him. I don't think it's that much of an issue, but maybe that's just me. Elsewhere, I've still got Chilwell. I'm pretty sure he's going to be locked in this team as long as he's fit for game week 1. Most of the attacks for Chelsea seem to be coming down that left. He's a really attacking fullback as well, and I am expecting them to pick up more clean sheets this year. The only thing for me is whether I start him in game week 1. Now, with the way the rest of this squad is set up, there's not really a huge amount of money for the bench, and I'll talk about the players I've got there in a second. So I would play Chilwell, but if I got rid of one of the attackers and went for someone a bit cheaper, I would probably look to bring in another 5.5 million defender like Ruben Dias or John Stones from Man City, and I would probably play them in game week 1. Now, that doesn't mean that I think Chilwell is a bad option to start with against Liverpool, not by any means, but if you've got a player from a better defence with a better fixture, then I would just play them. But as it stands, I would happily play Chilwell against Liverpool with this squad. In goal, I've got Onana. I'm fairly settled on him. I do think there's a high likelihood, because it happens every season, that a 4.5 million goalkeeper will do better than Onana early on. The difficulty is predicting who that will be. Whereas when you spend that extra 0.5, you can be fairly certain that Onana will be pretty good, right? He might not outscore all the other defenders, all the other goalkeepers, but it's very unlikely that he's an awful pick. Whereas Steele, Johnston, Flecken, even Pickford, I've seen people still talking about because Everton's fixtures are so good. One of them, or even more, could do great. But are you willing to kind of try and pick the right one? For me, I'd rather just spend that extra 0.5. It is something that I'm still considering, because most seasons in FPL, ever since I've been playing like more than 10 years ago, you always start with a 4.5. And one of the reasons for that is they can score quite heavily, but you want that money in other positions in the attack instead. Like, it's usually more useful to spend it in defence, midfield or attack. But this season, it just feels pretty comfortable to start with Onana. And I got to be honest, in the back of my mind, there's that thought of what if he does get an assist? That will feel pretty fun for FPL. So he's very much a lock. Areola on the bench, the same. Still hoping that he'll become first choice for West Ham. Just on the other bench picks quickly. For this, I've gone for Henry, Kabori and Mubama. I'm fairly settled on them with this kind of structure. I've only got a 4.5 million defender spot, so Henry's the one, because after Spurs, the fixtures are pretty good. So if anything happens to Chilwell, Estepinian or Gabriel, I've got someone there that can play. And if I really don't want to play Estepinian in, game week 4 against Newcastle, well, Henry's got Bournemouth at home. So it's really not that much of an issue for me whatsoever. So I kind of like him in this setup. Kabori is probably my favourite £4 million defender. I think I really want him or Baldock because they both play as wing-backs. But I think Kabori's minutes are going to be better longer term. Like, Baldock should be fine for the start. And Sheffield United do have better opening fixtures. They don't blank in game week 2. But at some point, he might lose his spot. I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but I'm probably just going to play it safer and go for Kabori. There probably is a conversation to have whether or not just to start with 2 4 million defenders and save that extra 0.5, because you shouldn't have to rely on them that much. And if they do, they could get you points like a 4.5 anyway. But I just feel a bit happy with Henry, especially with the fixtures that Brentford have early on. And then it does look at the moment like Mubama is possibly the best 4.5 million forward, or the most likely to get some minutes, because Scamacca almost certainly looks like he's going to leave. It's just a matter of time. We still don't know what's happened with Antonio. And Mubama has featured in every single West Ham pre-season game so far. I think I could be wrong on that. Let me know down in the comments if I am, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. So it's not like he's going to be first choice and play 90 minutes every week, but right now it looks like he's going to get the most minutes out of everyone. I'm a little bit worried because his ownership's going to creep up, and if he doesn't play, then you could lose value on it. But I think it's worth it if he is going to get some minutes. So I would say from these players, Onana, Gabriel, Estepinian and Chilwell are pretty locked. So is Areola, Kabori probably, and Mubama as well. It's only really Henry that might change. And that's only if I've got more money to spend. So 4 of the 5-man midfield are the same as the last draft. You've got Mbeumo, Saka, Fernandes and Rashford. And barring injury, I'd be very surprised if they don't make it into my game week 1 team. I mean, I am just like any other FPL manager. Once that deadline gets closer, there will be a bit of panic that starts setting in. Have I made the wrong choice? Is there someone that I haven't considered enough? Why have I got Saka when I can have Diaby from Villa or something crazy like that? But right now, they look like 4 very solid picks. The only player that could possibly go is Fernandes, and only if I want to fit Mo Salah in somewhere, because I think Rashford and Saka are above Fernandes in terms of FPL options, and I will talk about how to get Salah in a minute. But for my team that I'm probably going to go with, it's very likely to have no Liverpool players unless there's an injury to kind of Gakpo, Diaz, Jota, Nunez, etc. And am I worried about that? Yes, Salah and Trent are absolutely fantastic. Am I even more worried that I don't have a great route to get them? Yes, for sure. But at some point, you've got to commit to the kind of team you want to put together. And right now, I'm choosing just to spread that money around. So we'll come on to Salah in a second. The midfielder that's different is Martinelli. Loads of you have been telling me to put him in anyway. For what it's worth, I think Jesus was a really good pick. But obviously, once he's not an option, if you want that third Arsenal player and you want someone that's going to be a bit more assured for minutes, then you probably do have to either get a second defender or a second midfielder instead. And I've said previously, the reason that I like Jesus was because you could couple him with a 6.5 million midfielder and have extra funds to spend elsewhere, maybe make that bench a little bit better. But obviously, if you want to stick with someone in and around Jesus' price and still have an Arsenal midfielder, you need to find more money from somewhere. So that's why the Man City defender like Ruben Dias and John Stones isn't in this team, because I've had to go from a 6.5 million midfielder to Martinelli. Now, for what it's worth, yes, I do still have slight concerns about his minutes. He's absolutely first choice left winger for Arsenal. I've got no doubts about that. But I do think he's one of the attackers that could be subbed off early. And if I had 0.5 million more to spend, I probably would consider Odegaard. Obviously, there's ways to get that money. I could do a Nana to a 4.5. But I'm not so worried about Martinelli that I will go out of my way not to own him. Now, this video is coming out on Saturday. The Community Shield's on Sunday. We'll get a good idea of what Arteta sees as his first choice team, which we know most of the positions, right? I get that. But there is an injury to Jesus, and that could have a knock-on effect. So things might change after that game. But right now, if I want that third Arsenal player, then I've probably got to have Martinelli. And the thing for me, I could just go for a second 6.5 midfielder and just go without triple Arsenal. But I just don't want to do that with the fixtures that they've got. You know, Nottingham Forest at home, first day of the season, great fixture. Not first day, but, you know, first game of the season. Fulham at home in game week 3, great fixture. And in between that is Palace away. Is that easy? No, but it ain't bad. So the first 3 games are great. And the thing I like about this midfield, there's so many downgradable options, because the only midfielders that are more expensive are De Bruyne and Salah. And I just don't see where De Bruyne fits in. He's had no minutes during pre-season anyway. And the only other midfielder I could get priced out of is Son. Like, if he goes up in price and I'm stuck with Rashford for 9 million, then okay, I can't get him. But that's it. Anyone else, I can just downgrade, then also get money. So it just feels like a really nice way to set up. And if one of these players is wrong, let's say I'm right about Martinelli and Trossard's going to take too many of his minutes, which may or may not happen, then I can just downgrade into a 7.5, a 7 or whatever, 6.5, and it's easy. Then I got more money to spend elsewhere. So this is probably the kind of midfield I'll settle on. It's just Martinelli that I'm not completely sure about, but I'm sure the Community Shield would change my mind once he scored a brace. And then up front, it's of course Erling Haaland, and alongside him, I feel like I've basically been forced into getting Ollie Watkins, and I don't want that to sound like I think he's a bad option, because I don't, but for a long time I had Gabriel Jesus. I was happy with the setup. It allowed me double Arsenal attack, an extra 6.5 million midfielder, and then a bit more money to strengthen the bench to use in rotation and stuff like that. But of course, Mikel Arteta has said that he's going to be out for a few weeks, so he's going to miss the start of the season, no longer an option. When that happened, I put Nkunku in from Chelsea. You know, bit of a punt, those nice fixtures from game week 3 onwards, but he's gone off with an injury during pre-season. Now, I don't think Chelsea have any more pre-season games scheduled, but either way, we will hear from Pochettino before the start of the season. But if Nkunku's in any way a doubt for game week 1, there's just no point in starting with him. So next in line is Watkins. I don't like any of the other 7.5 or 8 million pound forwards, but luckily Watkins is decent enough. He often plays 90 minutes. His starts are not in question. He's always on that team sheet. He probably has penalties, although he did just miss another one during pre-season. He doesn't have a great record. Whether or not he keeps them, I don't think it makes a huge amount of difference. So that's basically why he's in the team. And when I looked at the points projections on Hub, which again you can check out if you sign up for one of their memberships, links in the description below, for forwards only, top is obviously Haaland, then Kane, but they're way more expensive. Above Watkins for the first 8 game weeks, they do have Wilson and Darwin, but I just think minutes-wise, they're both going to be a bit of an issue. So then it's Watkins. Obviously, Nkunku and Jesus now got issues, so they're not going to be in the team. So it's not like Watkins is a bad pick, right? And I wouldn't say I ever thought he was terrible. I spoke about him in a video the other day. I just preferred the other two. That's all there really was to it. And I think maybe Newcastle away has put a few people off. After that, it's Everton at home, Burnley away, which isn't awful. But in the first 6 game weeks, let me just double check who they've got here. Then they've got 2 other tough away games. Yeah, game week 4 it's Liverpool away. Game week 6 is Chelsea away. But I guess with his minutes, penalties, probably how good the Villa attack was last year under Emery, it's probably not the worst thing. If Jesus was fit, I wouldn't be starting with him. That's it. So I'm not disappointed that he's in my team. He's a solid option for 8 million, absolutely. But it's not where I would go if I wasn't kind of more forced into it. So that's how the team is set up. I've already spoken about a few changes. I don't think Mbeumo will change for what it's worth. I still have him ahead of Mitoma and Eze. People are starting to grind me down that Eze is maybe better than Mitoma because, you know, his minutes aren't in any question. Should play 90 most weeks. He's on penalties, no Europe. But I still like those opening fixtures for Brighton, so I would probably still go for Mitoma. But as it stands, I've only got one anyway. I could leave the setup similar to my last draft, where instead of Jesus, I've got Watkins. And rather than put Martinelli in, I could just put that second 6.5 million midfielder. That would then let me do Henry to a Man City defender and have 0.5 in the bank. But it just feels wrong not to go into the season with triple Arsenal. So again, I feel like I've kind of been forced into getting Martinelli as well. But as people will be right to point out, both him and Watkins are good options. So that's how my current draft looks right now. Let's take a quick look at Salah. So I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this because ultimately the Community Shield game tomorrow might change our thoughts and opinions again. But with that Jesus injury, it's not just FPL managers that are looking for a new forward. Mikel Arteta has got to choose someone to play that number 9 position. And there are a lot of players he could select from. For what it's worth, I don't think it'll be Balogun or Havertz. I think with Balogun in particular, it's more likely that he would leave Arsenal rather than line up against Man City or play much of a major role in the opening few weeks of the season. I just don't think he has that experience. So I don't think it'll be him. It could be Havertz. I don't think he particularly likes that number 9 role, and I don't think that's why Arsenal brought him in. But obviously for short-term cover, it could work. I think it's more likely to be Trossard or Nketiah. Now, if it's Trossard, we got a 7 million midfielder that could be playing out of position. And if it's Nketiah, he's only 5.5 million. Now, last year, when Jesus got injured, it was Nketiah that was given that position. Trossard only came in once Nketiah got an injury. Now, to be fair, Trossard played really well, and Arteta might have that in the back of his mind. But I think it's interesting that Nketiah was kind of next in line. And at 5.5 million for the opening few weeks, that is something to at least consider. There are obvious risks. Even if Nketiah starts against Man City, Trossard might start in game week 1. I think Nketiah is probably a little bit better running in behind, being that last man on the shoulder of a defender. But then you play Nottingham Forest, who are going to sit a bit deeper than Man City. You might want someone that can unlock that. And Trossard has a better skill set versus Nketiah. So there are massive risks with this. But for 5.5 million, it does potentially enable you to get Salah. So all I've done from the draft I just showed you is change 3 players, and that is Watkins, Fernandes and Martinelli to Nketiah, Salah and Mitoma. Now you could argue, even if Nketiah gets minutes, the other combination is better. But this way, you get your second Arsenal attacker for a lot less money. You get Salah, who right now is still a differential. He's about 25% owned, which is really low given what he can do and the fact he's got Bournemouth at home. And I think you could make an argument that the 6.5 million midfielders could keep up with Martinelli. I'm not saying they're necessarily better, but could a Mitoma or an Eze keep up with Martinelli? Possibly, remembering that you've still got your second Arsenal attacker anyway. So I think it's something that I would possibly consider, but I don't think it's something you would want long term. The thing I kind of like about it is you don't really get stuck because there's so much money to go around. So this is the squad here. So if Nketiah is not an option, I need to upgrade him to Watkins, which is obviously the player I had in the original draft, then you can just do that, put him in, you've got 2.5 million to make up, and you just take Salah out and you've got 10 million to spend. So you put in a Son, or you just put in Bruno Fernandes, and you've still got money left over. The only issue is, it's all well and good saying, well, it's just 2 transfers to go from Salah and Nketiah back to a midfielder and Watkins. But obviously that money could be used elsewhere. So instead of Mitoma, you could have Martinelli, or you could put that money on the bench. If you want to do that after the fact, there's a lot more transfers to then use. So this is by no means perfect, but it did give me some thought about how I might look to get Salah in. The other option is just not go for Nketiah and go for someone like João Pedro. But again, his minutes are a little bit of a concern for me. I think with Undav gone, that definitely helps him. But I'd want a bit more money on the bench to consider doing that, because if João Pedro becomes an issue, there's not many other forwards you can go to, possibly Morris at Luton, and we're not quite sure how they will perform early on either. And you don't want to rely on Henry, Kabori and Mubama on the bench. So this is probably a pipe dream, but I wanted to talk about it anyway, because if Nketiah lines up tomorrow, in the Community Shield, there's going to suddenly be a big bandwagon, and for a few weeks, maybe just about I could convince myself to get on board, but we'll see. So that's the draft with Salah. I spoke about the one without him, which is my main team right now. If you have enjoyed that, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and click those links in the description below to check out Fantasy Football Hub. Loads of great tools over there, 50% off at the moment, and don't forget, if you sign up and don't win your mini league, you can get your money back. Terms and conditions apply. All the links, description below. I'll catch you again soon.